What's up, everybody? Week 10 is in the books. There's a few different topics I want to cover today. Brian Daboll gets fired by the New York Giants. The New York Jets win back to back games. And I want to talk a little bit about that Packers and Eagles Monday Night Football game because it was very highly anticipated. And if you're a defensive minded person, you probably love that game. But I got some thoughts on it, mostly about the Packers and where I think they stand just in terms of the landscape of the NFL. But first thing we're going to talk about is Brian Daboll, the New York Giants, because this firing was different for me. It was unique for me because typically when a coach is 2-8, when a coach is in his fourth year and 3 out of the 4 seasons have been losing seasons, I'm fine firing the head coach, right? There's probably something rotten within this organization, within the coach, within the coaching staff. But I just don't feel that way with Brian Daboll. And that's not to say that Brian Daboll is the savior for the franchise. That's not to say that he's the next Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay. He's going to turn into Ben Johnson, right? I don't think Brian Daboll is the next great head coach that would take New York to the promised land. But I don't think he was the biggest issue for New York. To just kind of paint a picture here, because it's been a few years, right, since Brian Daboll has taken over. Took over in 2022. The first year, the Giants took the league by storm. They went 9-7-1, but they took the league by storm, given their expectations. So I still remember that week one game where Brian Daboll goes for it on fourth down in the red zone, scores a touchdown. After that game, it felt like it was a new era in New York with Daniel Jones playing the way that he was playing. He has his breakout year, Daniel Jones, that is. They have a top 15 offense, a top 5 rushing offense. Again, the record 9-7-1, nothing insane, but you make the playoffs, you go on the road and beat the 13-4 Minnesota Vikings 31-24 and what turned out to be a shootout. Daniel Jones outplays Kirk Cousins. And after that season, it felt like the only way the Giants could go was up. It felt like Daniel Jones is slowly going to get better and better and better, and taking him number 6 overall was not a mistake, and he's going to be a great quarterback. And because Daniel Jones has such a great season, expectations change, right? And money changes, and Daniel Jones gets paid. And now you look at the cap situation, you look at this team, and it's a little bit different than I think what was expected from them definitely entering the 2022 season. So after that, things go downhill. 2023, the Giants go 6-11. 2024, the Giants go 3-14. And in 2025, this season, they start off 2-8 before Brian Daboll gets canned. 2-8 is an ugly record. They had 4 games this year where they've been up by 10 or more points in the fourth quarter and have lost all 4 of those games. So again, I am not here to say that Brian Daboll has been perfect. Honestly, if you look from 2023 to 2025, so just removing his first season, they're 28th in EPA per play and they're 29th in success rate. The only offenses that have been worse over that time, you could probably guess some of them: the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, and the Tennessee Titans. That's not exactly a group you want to be a part of when you're talking about offense or honestly talking about football in general over the last few seasons. There's multiple reasons though for this, right? It's not just on Brian Daboll. All of a sudden, he didn't go from being a great play caller and quarterback guru in 2022 to all of a sudden just forgetting how to do that in 2023, in 2024, and in 2025. There's multiple reasons, right? You don't go from 9-7-1 to 6-11 to 3-14 just because of one thing. It was a multitude of things. But I do think the number one reason why this team started trending downward was because of Andrew Thomas. And we talk about value of players every single year, whether it's edge rushers, receivers, running backs, even quarterbacks, guys like Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts. How valuable are they to their team when the rest of the roster is so good? Andrew Thomas is one of those guys. When he is right, he is a franchise altering piece who's not a quarterback. In 2022, he played 16 games. He was healthy the whole season. They won 9. 2023, got some injuries, played only 10 games. 2024, even more injuries, played only 6 games. So those 23 and 24 seasons where the Giants go a collective 9-25, he was healthy for about half of them. This was not a guy that was able to stay consistently on the field. But to his credit, in 2025, he has been able to stay healthy. He's played 8 of 10 games so far this season, and it hasn't exactly turned into victories for the Giants. But when I look at 2023 and 2024, Andrew Thomas has a big reason why the New York Giants haven't been or weren't the team that I think we were expecting them to be after the 2022 season. But it wasn't just Andrew Thomas, it was also Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones in 2022 played all 16 games. In 2023, he played 6 games. In 2024, he played in 10 games. So in those 2 seasons, you get 16 games of Daniel Jones, and in between, you had to play Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and Tyrod Taylor. Who Tyrod Taylor had himself a decent season in 2023. I think he started 6 games. The Giants went 3-3, or maybe 2-3 and started 5. Regardless, he was an actual competent quarterback, and at times looked better than Daniel Jones in that 2023 season. But when you were starting Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito for a large portion, I don't think you could be exactly surprised that the Giants weren't winning games in 2023 and in 2024. So this brings me back to my main point. I don't think Brian Daboll was the problem here. I don't think Brian Daboll is the first person I would have been pointing my finger at if I was the New York Giants. Does that mean he should have stayed for the full season? No. Does that mean he should definitely have been the head coach next season? No, not at all. But the order of operations here to me is weird. I would have fired the defensive coordinator first. I would have fired the special teams coach first. I would have fired a linebackers coach. I would have fired the general manager first. Joe Shane is somehow still employed, and there's been multiple reports. There's been some reports right after Brian Daboll got fired that Joe Shane is going to stick around and really lead the charge in terms of this head coaching vacancy. But more recently, there's been some reports that John Mara is dealing with the health situation right now. We don't really know if Joe Shane's going to stick around, but they need somebody to kind of lead this search. So right now, it is Joe Shane, and beyond that, he's been applauded for kind of upgrading and revamping their scouting system, getting all these analytics and data all under one system that the Giants just didn't have before. And apparently, John Mara and the ownership group was really impressed by that. But when I look at the state of the Giants roster, when I look at the state of what this team is, just black and white, I don't know what you expected Brian Daboll to do. Nobody had the Giants making the playoffs this year. Nobody thought the Giants were going to be this sneaky wild card team. I think we had hopes for a really strong defensive line and maybe an offense that could figure it out with Jackson Dart looming in the background. But if you looked at the draft history of Joe Shane, I think you would seriously question why this man is still employed. In 2022, his first draft, he is blessed with 2 top 10 draft picks. He turns number five pick, and the number 7 pick into Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. The Jets had 2 top 10 picks in that draft. They drafted Sauce Gardner. They drafted Garrett Wilson. You could see kind of the opposite spectrums that's being painted right after your first draft. Now, listen, Kayvon Thibodeau, is he a mega super bust? No. Like, he is a fine rotational pass rusher. He's had some highlights throughout his career. Did he live up to the number 5 overall pick? No. But I don't think he is someone who is unplayable. Someone like Evan Neal, who is a gigantic bust, someone that is probably not going to be starting anytime soon for any team. If you move on to that 2022 draft, second round, you take Wan'Dale Robinson. Third round, you take Joshua Ezeudu and Cordell Flott. Cordell Flott has turned into a really solid corner, so I want to give Joe Shane his props there. Ezeudu has not turned into a strong offensive lineman. He hasn't played a game so far for the Giants in 2025. He's been a spot starter here and there in the previous seasons, but he is not somebody that is a foundational piece or even really a depth piece, I think, for the New York Giants going forward. So in 2022, what'd you hit on? Cordell Flott in the third round. I'll give you props there. Wan'Dale Robinson looks like a wide receiver 3, probably at best. And the 2 top 10 picks have not turned into difference makers whatsoever. So I think that 2022 class is a flop. 2023, it must get better. No. Deontay Banks in the first round, that's a bust. John Michael Schmitz in the second round, that's a bust. Jalen Hyde in the third round, that's a bust. I won't get too much into day 3 picks because day 3 picks could be just a crapshoot. But round 1, round 2, round 3, you didn't get anyone who you're looking at right now as foundational pieces for this team. Deontay Banks he had some flashes his rookie year, but he has severely fallen off. Jalen Hyatt requested a trade, I think, or did the Giants want him? I don't know. Jalen Hyatt doesn't get on the football field, and John Michael Schmitz is like a below average interior offensive lineman. He's just not impressive. But let's move on to 2024 and 2025 because if you do want to paint a prettier picture, I think this is where you can do it. 2024 first round pick Malik Neighbors hits a home run. He is, when healthy, a top 10 receiver. The potential for him to be a top 5 receiver is there. The potential to be the best receiver in football is there. That's how special Malik Neighbors is. You get credit. Tyler Nubin, he has regressed this year. Rookie year was really solid. Year two has not been impressive. Andrew Phillips, similar, right? He had a strong rookie year, regressed this year. Rounds 4 and 5, I'll give him credit. Theo Johnson looks like a really solid tight end pickup, and Tyrone Tracy, a backup running back in the 5th round. And move on to 2025. Abdul Carter, home run. Am I giving you props for taking the no-brainer #1 defensive player in the draft that everyone said you should take? No, but whatever. You whipped on the #5 pick in Kayvon Thibodeau, so I'll give you credit for taking Abdul Carter. You took Jackson Dart later in the draft, where you traded up into the 1st round. Joe Shane doesn't get credit here. This was Brian Daboll's guy. There is video proof of Joe Shane talking to Brian Daboll and ownership and other executives saying, listen, if you miss on a 1st round pick, everyone's going to remember that. If you miss on a third, it doesn't matter. This was Brian Daboll's guy. Jackson Dart was Brian Daboll's guy. Brian Daboll wanted to take Jackson Dart #3 overall. He was infatuated with him, and he looks right so far. So I'm not giving Joe Shane the benefit of the doubt there. He took Darius Alexander in the 3rd round. He has not been good interior defensive lineman. And he took Cam Scotabo. So I'll give him credit there. Of course, he looked awesome before the injury. But you have 4 drafts so far with Joe Shane. And I think if you poll Giants fans in terms of what is your confidence level going into the 2026 draft, I can't imagine more than 30%, 20% of Giants fans think Joe Shane really has a grasp on the drafts. He's hit 2 home runs in 4 drafts. Neighbors, Abdul Carter. He's hit a couple singles, right? Theo Johnson, Wandell Robinson. Again, I'm being a little lenient here because I think you could find Wandell Robinson's on day 3 in free agency pretty often. He's not a difference maker, but I'll give it to him. Cordell Flott probably isn't a singles, probably double. He's been their best corner right now, so I think you definitely deserve props there. But you struck out on Kayvon Thibodeau, on Evan Neal, on Deontay Banks, on John Michael Schmitz. And again, Jackson Dart, I'm just not giving you credit. Like that was Brian Daboll's guy. So you'll keep Joe Shane. What I just listed, right? What I just listed, striking out on top 10 picks, striking out on other 1st round picks like Deontay Banks and 2nd round picks like John Michael Schmitz. You're going to keep him to possibly lead this team into the future, to hire a new coach, to make free agency decisions and draft decisions and trade decisions. He did trade for Brian Burns. That was a good trade. I didn't give him his props there, but that was a good deal there. At the end of the day, though, it all comes down to who the Giants replace Brian Daboll with, because we've heard some really wild names. Rappaport, I believe, tweeted some of these out. Antonio Pierce, former New York Giant, Lane Kiffin, Steve Spagnuolo. If I'm a Giant fan, if you hired one of these 3 guys, I would not be rooting for this team. It just feels like all 3 of these would be a colossal failure. Antonio Pierce, Lane Kiffin, Steve Spagnuolo. But you have heard them linked to some great names, right? Jesse Minter, Clint Kubiak. In a world where the Browns move off Kevin Stefanski, I think he would be a tremendous hire for the New York Giants. So the reality is we just don't really know yet, right? We don't really know if this was the right move or the wrong move because we don't know who they're going to hire. If they go out and they make a smart hire, whether that's a Jesse Minter or Kubiak, I've heard Jeff Hafley's name thrown around, defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, then I can't be too upset because, yeah, look at the last 3 years. This is a head coach that has not done a lot of winning. 2-8 this season, the blown leads. There's also talk about him just maybe not having the best interest in mind when it comes to Jackson Dart, leaving him out there when he's on 100%. You had some reports, I believe it was at the end of last season, just his communication sometimes with other staff members and players isn't always the most professional. Again, Brian Daboll isn't perfect. But when I look at the Giants, the organization, the coaching staff, the front office, he's just not the first guy I would have fired. He's 2-8 this year. Did he deserve to get fired just based off wins and losses alone? Yes. Does he deserve to get fired off of what the offense has looked like for the last 3 years? Sure. But I think when you put some context into it, when you look at the injuries to their star left tackle, to their quarterback, and the draft history and the offensive infrastructure that's around them, like I didn't even talk about, they let Saquon walk, they let Xavier McKinney walk. Those were 2 hugely impactful players for this team. What's Brian Dable supposed to do when I was before last season? Your wide receiver one's been Darius Slayton, right? It's been Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard and Wandell Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and Tyrone Tracy last year. What I mean, what I don't know what head coach, maybe Kyle Shanahan, right? But outside of the most elite offensive minds are making that offense work, especially with the quarterback play. Daniel Jones had regressed mightily, and then he was hurt, and then you were playing with backup quarterbacks. So it would have taken a lot, I think, for Brian Dable to survive this. And he probably shouldn't have, right? Like, I would have been very surprised if he entered next season as the head coach. But this needs to be a clean sweep. If you're the Giants, you have to go into the future with a new GM and a new head coach tied together. We have seen in various different situations. I saw it with the Jets. I saw it with Adam Gase and Joe Douglas, right? I saw it. We see it with Tennessee now, right? When they're not hiring GM and head coach at the same time, but it's on two of these different kind of time frames and timelines. It usually doesn't work out. You usually need to hire GM and coach together. They are in lockstep so you could go into the future with the same ideologies and the same ideas. You don't want to have a GM in place picking the head coach. And in a year, if things don't go right, they're not going to fire the head coach who's been there for 8 games. They're going to fire the general manager. It's just I don't think it's the right logic or mindset when it comes to team building and team construction and just coaching staffs. But we'll see what the Giants do. They have been one of the most poorly run organizations over the last 5 years. Coming from a Jets fan, we're probably the most poorly run, but it's like the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, and the Giants. It's kind of like those four organizations just finding out who can be worse than the others. But right now, I think we have to wait and see who they hire. Moving on, the New York Jets. New York Jets won a game, two in a row, 2 wins in a row, beat the Cleveland Browns 27-20 on the back of two special teams touchdowns. Don't look now, folks, but the New York Jets have the best special teams unit in football. Nick Folk has not missed a kick, not an extra point, not a field goal, zero missed kicks. And the story nobody's talking about that everyone should be talking about, the Jets might have the best punter in football. Austin McNamara, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Austin McNamara is PFF's number one graded punter. He's been spectacular. He's been awesome. If you look at the Jets' rankings in terms of special teams based on DVOA, number one in field goals and extra points, number one in kick returns, number two in punting, number five in punt returns, 11th in kickoff. Shout out to Michael Nanya for pulling up some of those numbers that I saw him put on Twitter today. This Jet season and these last 2 wins, have they been pretty? No. No, not at all. I mean, I guess the Bengals game was kind of pretty, right? You were able to move the ball. You scored a lot of points. This game against the Browns, not so much. Justin Fields completed 6 passes for 54 yards. One of those passes was screen pass to Brees Hall, which he took for like 30 or 40 yards. So outside of that, we're talking about like a 20-yard game from Justin Fields. Man, it was ugly. Again, you're playing the Browns defense. Browns have an awesome defense, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, Justin Fields, how dare you? I am interested to see who they name the quarterback, because when you win back-to-back games, it's very easy to just ride with Justin Fields, right? It's easy to talk to the media. This guy's won his 2 games. And I'd be fine. I'd be fine if they just stuck with Justin Fields for this Thursday game against New England. But I'd be really impressed if they switched to Tyrod Taylor. I would be really impressed if they had the foresight and they didn't look at results, but rather looked at the process and said, we're not going to beat the New England Patriots throwing for 30 yards. It's not going to happen. Can we beat the Cleveland Browns with Dylan Gabriel? Yes. Can we beat the Bengals, who have the worst defense in football? Sure. The New England Patriots look like a top 5 team in football. Drake May's playing an MVP level. You're not going to be able to get by. You're not going to be able to be competitive. Like, you will get embarrassed on national television if Justin Fields has won these games again. So I would be super impressed if they made a switch and they went to Tyrod Taylor instead of just trotting out Justin Fields again. And then the last thing I'll say just about the Jets, because as a Jets fan, I'm sure I'm not the only one. We root for losses a lot. We rooted for losses in Trevor Lawrence's draft. We rooted for losses, I mean, for basically every single year, because the Jets have not been competitive for a while. Even in the last 2 Aaron Rodgers years at the end of last season, it's like, yeah, you're probably rooting for losses. Get me a better draft pick. I don't think I'm doing that this year. And It's not because I don't want a good draft pick, because I need the Jets to take a quarterback. I want them to have a top 5 pick. But this year isn't like recent tanking seasons, because I just go back to Trevor Lawrence's draft. That team was so bad. There was no pieces on that team that I looked at in the future and said, "Wow, that's going to be the guy." It was like Mekhi Becton. Like that was the guy we were looking at saying, "Man, I hope he can really figure it out." But this team's different in terms of young pieces that are going to be here for the foreseeable future. Against the Browns, Miles Garrett had 1 sack. Miles Garrett, who's had games this year of 4 and 5 sacks. Miles Garrett had 1 sack. This young trio on the offensive line of Olu, Membu, and Joe Tippmann have been great this season. I know some of the PFF numbers and the win rates aren't the prettiest, but you have to remember, you have a quarterback who is holding the ball longer than any quarterback in the NFL. They are not running an offense that is a normal offense right now. Justin Fields is going to hold on the ball for 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds, when in reality, most quarterbacks are getting it out under 3 seconds. So I don't think you should look at some of these numbers and grades just because of the uniqueness of this quarterback. And by uniqueness, I mean trash of the quarterback. This offensive line is kick ass. Like, this offensive line is amazing. They know, everyone knows, the Browns know we're going to run the ball. We passed the ball for damn 54 yards, and Brees Hall was still getting chunk gains. I think this offensive line is for real. So am I going to be mad when they hold Miles Garrett to 1 sack, when they hold the Browns defensive line to 1 sack? No, 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 not at all. I'm going to be thrilled. I'm going to be happy. Am I going to be mad when Will McDonald has 4 sacks in a game like he did last week, or like he did in week 1 when he had a handful of sacks? No. Will McDonald's awesome. He's someone that should be a focal point. He's someone they should be extending this offseason, because he is by far and away their best pass rusher. I know he has some issues in terms of run defense, but god damn, when's the last time someone, can put up multi-digit sacks in a single game? The explosiveness that he has is special. Am I going to be mad when Brees Hall is averaging damn near 5 a carry this season and he looks explosive and he looks like pre-ACL Brees Hall? Am I supposed to be mad when he rips off a 45-yard touchdown? No. The Jets are bad right now. They're 2-7, 2-8, but they have pieces, right? They have these pieces on the offensive line, at edge rusher, at running back, even at corner. I know it wasn't the best game for a guy like Jarvis Brownlee. Azaria Thomas got a bit banged up, but when these young pieces play well, the Jets can win some games, and they're not going to win. They're not going to go 7-10, right? They're not going to win 9 or 10 games. No, no, no. But if they end the season with 4 or 5 wins instead of 2 or 3 wins, I'm not going to be upset, because I need this team to learn how to win. I need this team and Aaron Glenn and this coaching staff to instill some confidence in this team and be like, listen, guys, this is how you win. The first 7 weeks we were 0-7, but for the last 10 weeks of the season, shit, we finished 4-6. That is what I want to see from the Jets, and that's the sort of progress that I want to see from this coaching staff and some of their young pieces. But moving on, last topic here. We're about 20, 25 minutes in. Packers Eagles Monday Night Football. What a game that was. 10-7, 0-0 at halftime. It was something. I leave this game though with more questions for the Packers and the Eagles. I think it's because the Eagles have been winning ugly like this for 3 years, right? Like, even going back to 2023, the year after they went to the Super Bowl, they started off 11-0 with a bunch of ugly wins. 2024 last year, they had ugly wins, even winning the Super Bowl. This year, the first 7 weeks of the season, they had ugly wins. The Eagles just win ugly, right? They can have those breakout games offensively where A.J. Brown and Smitty and Saquon go crazy, but more often than not over the last few years, they're going to win ugly. So this doesn't shock me, especially on the road, against a Packers team that's desperate after a loss against the Carolina Panthers. We have questions about the Eagles, but I want to focus more on the Packers. What's the Packers' identity? I've been struggling to figure that out over the last couple of days, because last season, to me, it felt like their identity was Josh Jacobs. It felt like this was a team that is going to punch you in the mouth with Josh Jacobs. He had 300 carries, 1,300 yards, 4.5 a carry. This was just an offense that could punch you in the mouth time and time and time again. And Josh Jacobs looked great last year. On top of that, they were an efficient passing attack, number 7 in EPA in drop back EPA, and they were a defense that turned you over. They were number 4 in turnovers last year defensively. So you had an offense that could run the ball and pass the ball efficiently, and you had a defense that were able to turn you over pretty consistently too. Remember Xavier McKinney in the beginning of last season felt like he had a turnover in 5 straight weeks. it felt like the identity last year for the Packers was a lot more obvious. They were opportunistic on defense, and they were an offense that could beat you in multiple ways. This year, they're still an efficient passing offense. They're actually more efficient than they were last year, number 4 in drop back EPA. But Josh Jacobs has fallen off a bit, right? He goes from 4.5 a carry to 3.8. He's been nursing this groin injury, I believe it is. It's some soft issue. I believe it's a groin. Like 9% sure, maybe it's a hamstring, but I'm pretty sure it's a groin. So he hasn't looked his same explosive, strong self, although I think he has gotten better the last couple of weeks. But other than that, it's a defense that went from turning everybody over last year, again, top 5 in the NFL, to turning nobody over. And by the numbers, defense still great, right? Like you look at, EPA, DVOA, if you look at just raw numbers, the defense is still like basically top 10 across the board. And this sounds silly to say, but like they don't scare anybody. They don't turn the ball over. They don't sack anybody. Situationally, they're fine. They're not Denver, who lead the league in sacks. They're not Seattle, who have Mike McDonald, that head coach, or Brian Flores, who gives you all these crazy looks. That's just not who they are. They have 6 turnovers this season. The only team with less turnovers than the Green Bay Packers and New York Jets, who have 1 turnover. It's the Packers have the second fewest turnovers at 6. The Jets have the fewest turnovers at 1. That makes me want to just throw up. It's sickening. But regardless, they have the second fewest turnovers in the NFL. They have 22 sacks on the season. That's 15th in the NFL. Their red zone defense average 18th. Fourth down defense average 17th. Third down defense, they're good. They're top 10 unit, number 10 overall. But when I look at them compared to the other teams in the NFC, the Seahawks, the Rams, the Eagles, the Lions, what is this Packers team going to do to make them stand out? What lever do they have? Can they flip that makes them different or makes them special? The numbers say it's the passing offense and Jordan Love being one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. He had a bad game yesterday. I know people are going to overreact. I still think Jordan Love is great. He's been mostly fantastic this season. But you're telling me you're going to be relying on an efficient passing attack that is without Tucker Kraft and a wide receiver unit of Matthew Golden, who is banged up right now and a rookie, Christian Watson, who just returned from injury and hasn't been able to stay healthy basically his whole career, Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Dobbs and Luke Musgrave. The numbers say that's how you do it because that is your strong suit. I don't think that's going to fly. I don't think that's going to work in the NFL, in the NFC, in this playoff picture, when you're going to have to go band for band with the Seahawks or the Rams or the Eagles again or the Detroit Lions. Those other teams, they have an identity. Seattle, the most efficient passing offense in the last 20 years, and a defense that terrifies everybody, defense that can turn the ball over, can get sacks. When I look at the Rams, you have a quarterback playing at probably a top 2 level in the NFL, a head coach that has done it, has won a Super Bowl, a front 7 that can get after you, and probably the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. When I look at the Lions, this offensive line, the running game, the efficiency in the passing game, a defense that's going to be getting healthier, and a team that's proven they can win some games in the playoffs. The Eagles, they're Super Bowl champions. What else is there to be said? All of these teams have identities. All of these teams have these strong suits that I think you can count on. I just don't think the Packers have right now. Um, so I know at the beginning of the season when Micah got there, I was super high, just like everybody. I thought it was a team that could win the Super Bowl. It's a team that should be favorites to win the NFC North. When I look at it now, they are probably the 5th best team in the NFC. Again, the 4 teams I just mentioned, 2 teams out west, Seattle, Los Angeles. I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I have the Detroit Lions. Those are 4 teams to me that feel pretty safe. When I look at the rest of the NFL, I don't think the Bucs are there. I don't think the Commanders, of course, are too banged up right now. The Vikings, the Bears, no. Like they, to me, feel like the 5th best team in the NFC. The 5th best team in the NFC tells me that you probably won't win a playoff game. Maybe you win one playoff game. But as things stand right now, if you're going up against Seattle or the Rams, right? Say you win the division, but you have to play the top wild card team, which would be Seattle or the Rams. Good luck, man. That's going to be a really tough opponent. Now, maybe they have just not gotten lucky with turnovers, right? They should be higher. Maybe they haven't gotten lucky with sacks. Sacks don't feel lucky as much as turnovers do, but it's a team right now that I just think lacks identity and is not making enough explosive plays defensively for the talent that they have and for the acquisition of Micah Parsons. I just don't think they've done enough. I think the running game should be better. I think the defense should be better. I think the coaching should be better. The fact that you went for it on 4th and 1 yesterday without calling a timeout, you had two timeouts in your pocket. The clock wasn't much of an issue. There's like a minute and a half left. You need another maybe 20 or 30 yards to get into field goal range. Call a timeout. Make sure everybody's on the right page, on the same page. Don't have illegal formation penalties, right? Like Matt LaFleur is a great head coach. Yesterday was a piss poor performance from everybody, including Matt LaFleur, including Jordan Love. I'm not going to look at just that game and be like, that's it. But when you do look at the whole body of work, when you look at the whole season for the Packers, we're 9 weeks in, we have half a season of sample size for this Green Bay Packers team. Right now, they're not good enough. They're not good enough, I think, for the expectations that a lot of people had on them. That wraps things up. Half an hour of talk and blab and nothing. I can't believe GTA 6 got delayed, by the way. I can't believe GTA 6 got delayed. Uh, well, what do you think? Jets win a playoff game. GTA 6 comes out first. Let me know in the comments. Appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to be doing my best to drop these once a week. Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, pick a side. You know where I'm at. Appreciate you guys. See you next time.